Alright, I just wanted to show you how much wear is on the old shaft compared to the new shaft. So, as we can see here, this bearing is quite loose, and not only does it have a really worn bearing, as you can see, it also really moves a lot on the shaft itself, and somebody has tried to braze and fill in that gap, but it just wore back down and became really sloppy again. Also, this gear has a lot of movement, and as you can see, it has quite a bit of wear on the splines. So I knew I needed to get a new shaft and a new bearing. Obviously, the gear itself has relatively okay splines. It's just the shaft. So I needed pretty much new everything but the gear. So here's the one I got on eBay. As you can see, these splines look way better than these splines because you can see that wear ledge right here. So that takes care of that. And so also the bearing doesn't move hardly at all on the shaft. It slides back and forth, which is what it needs, but it is a good bearing too, so solve that problem. So gear has barely any wiggle compared to this one, which helps a lot, and it just looks beefier by the little nubs here and here. This is a later model shaft, so I assume there's going to be some improvements, and I have no worries about these splines because they have barely been worn, it looks like. So can't really complain. Everything's nice and stiff. Hell, even the threads on the shaft to hold the brake drum on this one are really rusted, and I don't really trust it to hold any actual tension on the brake drum, but it doesn't have to. It just maintains it. It's hard to get started because it's so bad. This one also is an improvement because you can actually see teeth on here, and they got a better nut. I flattened out both of these washers. Both of them were a little bent. Fixed them both up. Shafts are exactly the same length. I already tested that, so I don't have to worry too much. This bearing here is the inner bearing by the big spur gear. This one was a little bit worn. It's like 30 thousandths off, so I figured I might as well replace that. About 120 bucks. Not too bad. Could be reused, so I probably will keep it around just in case things happen on the other side. But who knows? Anyway, I got the safety wire redone on here. Just it was a piece of copper wire stuck in there and twisted together. So now everything's tight, pulling it on it, so it wants to be tighter again. This felt seal inside, I took this plate off before I put the safety wire on, and it's a coil, so I didn't really take it out, but it seems to be okay in shape. It's not really super worn, way better than I would have pictured. Then I got a new bearing inside here. Then I did the retaining plate, and then more safety wire, if I can get it to show. Maybe if I turn it here. Nah, it doesn't want to show. Well, I put new safety wire on there too, because that was also copper wire, so it has definitely had this apart before. And it doesn't have any movement now because of the bearing. Before I had quite a bit of movement, and now it just moves back and forth, rotation wise. And for the hub, I got that roller bearing, which I'll show you here in a moment. I have this one and this one are a little bit bigger, like a 1/16 bigger diameter on the collar of the bolt, as you can probably see, compared to this one. These are all tight. I don't even worry about it. But there's two bigger ones, which I was happy to get. I was surprised to see them. So I cleaned this all up last night, put it together. There's a felt, this is the felt seal. The felt seal is actually on the top ledge here. This bearing is a greased bearing. This bearing's greased, that bearing inside is oiled. The oil passage comes up to this bearing and it hits this bearing. There's nothing keeping the other bearing from getting hit by oil, even though it's greased. So usually this whole entire place in the center gets full of grease. Clean that all out. I know it's not for grease because there's a drain tube back into the bottom of the gearbox, so I'm not too worried about that anymore. So I packed the bearing with grease. I reassembled it, put the race in, the hub, reassembled. Turned out rather well. As you can see, it turns relatively smoothly. The seal surface turned out well. I tapped all of the holes because I noticed when I took it apart that some of them were a little wallered because someone has taken this apart many times, I assume. I'm going to replace every one of these bolts, probably with straight grade 8s, because I am tired of fighting bolts and nuts and washers and breaking them all the time. Probably going to do that side too. Just do one at a time, get it over with. I'll show you the hub bearing and how worn it was. Here's the old hub. And as you can see, it's a roller bearing. It's quite wide. And this is not a bad one, but it was not the best. So that would work, but this ledge here has a bit of a lip, and I knew I wanted to get something better. Along with these splines are also quite worn. So that these are going into gear to engage it. And yeah, that's it.